Talking about fuel scarcity in some states, as it were, and all connected. I mean, you saw that headline: marketers blame National Assembly for fuel crisis. The government has set up Dr. Christopher Collade committee. Malam Ribadu heads another committee, and it's all with a view to ensuring that all goes well in that petroleum subsector. But then there's a report also when the president inaugurated Dr. Christopher Collade's committee, and I remember the Shore Reinvestment Program, a whole lot. So today we'll focus on the expectations from these committees. How and will they? When will they? Well, this is one of such reports where that inauguration was done.
The banquet hall for the program that attracted government officials, the organized private sector, and the teeming Nigerian youths. President Goodluck Jonathan first inaugurated the Committee on Subsidy Reinvestment, a committee he set up in the heat of the subsidy removal saga to help convince Nigerians that money from subsidy will be fully implemented. On the second part, he flags off the National Public Works Women and Youth Employment Scheme of the Subsidy Reinvestment Program, designed to create jobs for 370,000 Nigerians in 1 year.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
This administration views the prevailing high rate of unemployment among our youth with great concern, especially with the rising spate of youth militancy, violence crimes, and other social vices inimical to the political and economic stability of the nation.
The Vice President, Architect Namadi Sambo, and the Minister of Finance, who also doubles as the coordinating minister for the economic management team, speak on the objective of the Public Works project and the areas of specialization.
Global experience has shown that public work program represent a viable short-term quick win that can bring immediate succor to our unemployed youth.
The youth will be actively engaged in public works like environmental sanitation, beautification and conservation, rehabilitation and maintenance of public infrastructure, and other forms of labor-intensive works. The Public Works Women and Youth Employment Program is unique in 3 ways. First, it is designed to target the core poor and vulnerable members of the society by reserving at least 30% participation for women and 20% for other vulnerable and disadvantaged members of the society.
And for members of the committee, especially the chairman, Dr. Christopher Collade, Nigerians deserve nothing less. He calls for integrity at all times and genuine participation from the state and local governments.
Although our committee is really set up to manage the federal government part of this program, we know that we will succeed best if we have genuine partnership with the state governments and the local governments.
Nigerians may applaud the initiative so far launched by the administration to curb unemployment, but they are, however, waiting to see how the schemes will enhance quality social and economic infrastructure across the federation. Chukuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.
Well, there you have it, and remember, there's also this Malam Nuhu Ribadu-led committee, 21-member committee, which is also set up to take a look at that sector and see if they could sanitize it. In addition to that, it was only recently that the Federal Executive Council also approved the disbursement of some 15 billion naira. They say it's a revolving interest-free loan to boost public transportation in the country. And then it all goes on in that sector. Well, Mr. Pastor Martin joins us now, a management consultant. Thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you very much.
Well, looking at all of this, I mean, previously we had heard people who have said it didn't look as though we saw a coordinated effort to ensure that this reinvestment program actually goes properly and well planned. But from what we've seen now, isn't that a typology of good planning in the works?
Now, the question we ask ourselves, where do we place what we just watched side by side with what was said on TVC just Wednesday? You know, there was this program on TVC about government backing down on the sure thing that originally, when it was planned, it was based on total deregulation. It was not expected that it was going to be just 97% that is going to be increased to, we're expecting 141. In other words, what was expected to be realized that should be reinvested has dipped by virtue of that development. I don't think that has been factored into what was said here. I think this precedes that development.
This does, but then doesn't it make management or economic sense if you planned a wholesale removal of the subsidy for that sector and it wasn't done that way? So are you still going to go ahead and wanting to implement it wholesale as opposed to when you didn't have it? Isn't it common sense?
The question is, why didn't we get it right from the beginning? We had ample opportunity to get it right from the beginning. We bungled it. Remember how it started? Government said it was going to go the whole hog because there are so and so benefits. And then they organized the first town hall meeting to explain what these benefits are and how they will be enjoyed so that Nigerians also can make inputs. Inputs were made. Questions were asked. How much do we really consume of these petroleum products on daily basis? And how much is it in Naira terms? Those questions were not properly answered. In fact, there was this conflict between the figure quoted by the Minister of Finance and the one and what the Governor of Central Bank thought was the truth. And if you have a situation like that where two key figures of the administration, the person in charge of monetary policy and the person in charge of fiscal policy, disagree on such a critical issue openly, the bottom is taken out of the thing immediately. There is no basis. The moment somebody said it's 35 million liters per day, and the other person said, I don't believe so, and these are key people in the administration, then it simply means that the basis does not exist for anything.
Isn't it in the light of that, I mean, we've seen the House of Reps ad hoc committee on the fuel subsidy regime. We've seen the Senate committee on that sector also looking at a whole lot of matters. And then government set up two committees. You have the Dr. Khaledi committee, you have the Malam Nuhu Ribadu committee. In fact, one of the terms of reference was for the Ribadu committee is to work with consultants and experts to determine and verify all petroleum upstream and downstream revenues, tax, royalties due and payable to the government, take all necessary steps to collect all debts due and owing to obtain agreement. It goes on, and then there's one which may just interest everyone: to work with consultants to integrate systems and technology across the production chain to determine and monitor crude oil production, and experts so that they just ensure that these leakages, these challenges that we've seen, is corrected.
I mean, why? What was the hurry actually in the so-called subsidy removal and then all the crises and setting up committees? You see, we like smoke screening with committees in this country. That's what we always had. In 2004, we had a committee on palliative. You're talking about the Christopher Kolade Commission now. Committee, we had one when President Obasanjo was also trying to remove subsidy or trying to increase fuel pump price in 2004. We talked about palliatives, and the Senate, as it was then, passed a resolution to say, look, don't do it. The executive went ahead and did it. And what did he do? He set up a committee, a palliative committee. And who headed the palliative committee? The then Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Ibrahim Mantu. I happened to be here, to be on Channels Television with 3 other people on the issue. And there was an issue I raised, that it's worrisome that the Senate passed a resolution saying don't do this until so and so has been done. Why that resolution subsists? The second in command in the Senate now chairs a committee set up by the executive which defied the resolution. And and these are two separate arms of the government. It's baffling. And as I said, nothing was going to come out of it. Then the palliative went on. They announced just the same thing we are hearing today. Bosses, this, that. At the point of implementation, the Almighty Governors Forum said, sorry, we are not in it. You didn't carry us along. And the whole thing died. Meanwhile, the increase was made, but the palliatives never came. That's where we are again.
Okay, so if you were consulted to see, given where we are now, with these committees in place and with what we see going on, how would you remedy the situation?
Now, let me tell you something. You see, we had a situation where the president submitted to the National Assembly what he called the medium-term economic framework to look at. It was discovered that subsidy was not there, as had always been the case, which meant something was going to happen to it. And so the Senate set up the ad hoc committee to say, look, this subsidy thing, there was even the issue raised by Senator Saraki to the effect that 245 billion naira was approved for subsidy in the 2011 budget. But as at that time, it had shot up to over 1 trillion naira. And there was a need to find out. So the Senate set up a committee to find out. At one point, different government officials at critical levels gave conflicting figures. And the committee said, okay, you go back, harmonize your figures, and get back to us. That was the point at which they went on recess, a Christmas and New Year recess. On New Year Day, while that was going on, why this harmonization had not been done, why it had not been determined, why a budget provision of 245 billion went up to 1.3 trillion. When it had not been decided, what we had was an increase. It doesn't happen in anywhere.
Yeah, how did we get to this point?
And that's the question we should ask. So before we set up the Colade Commission, the committee, the Ribadu committee, we first of all need to know how much of this product do we consume and for what reasons. Number two, what does it actually cost us? Number three, how come we budgeted 245 billion naira and spent 1.something trillion? And when the budget with the House of Reps probe was on, we started counting, and we are counting to almost 2 trillion.
Yeah, but yeah.
So what? Yes.
In many ways, I think we should be thankful that those questions are already been asked. I mean, the Senate is already asking those questions. The committee did not stop sitting because subsidy was taken away. The House of Reps too has also taken it upon itself to ask those questions, and that was where we even heard that we could be going towards 2 trillion naira as it stands, even though the CBN has told us that 1.7 trillion was spent as of December 2011 on subsidy payment. But be that as it may, all of that is still going on, and be that as it may, some money is being saved, whether or not we like it, from some of the subsidy that was removed. So, do you think that, in the light of all of this, the committee should not stand, or that's the Christopher Kalade committee should not continue its work?
What I am saying is this: you don't set up committees where there is no basis. We have a conflict. Look at the things I just mentioned. All these things, as long as they are not resolved, there is nothing that any committee can do. Let us even leave it at that. Look, you talked about subsidy. The chairman of the committee just said a moment ago that even though they are going to be concerned with the share
of the federal. Yes, because they were supposed to be doing it in conjunction with the state government. And I think it was significant that this time around, if you looked at the report, Rotimi Amechi, who represents the Governors Forum, was there. It means that this time around, the governors were carried along.
Fine. What I'm trying to tell you is that with what is happening now, because of the fact that these questions have not been answered, we don't even know the figure. Nobody can say today this is the amount of money that this committee will be working with. We don't know. So if you don't know how much the committee will be working with, then what is the committee working on?
Okay, so what would you have them determine to remedy this situation?
What we should do? Remember, you see the idea of making mistakes and beginning to talk about remedies, that is, we do it in this country, it baffles me. When this issue of subsidy was put in, what we were made to understand was that we were going to be looking at it until April. Which was the reason why the life of the 2011 budget was extended to the end of March. So what we would have done if we wanted to do a good job of it was to look at it critically, iron out all these things, determine precisely. It's very, very important that we know what we consume and what it costs us. And let me tell you something. If you remove subsidy, there is a difference between increasing pump price and removing subsidy. There are two different things. If I'm selling something for 10 naira and I now say, okay, I want to sell it for 20 naira, I have a margin of 10 naira. But when you are removing subsidy, which is a strategic management decision, okay, if you remove subsidy, you suffer some losses. And before you talk of your benefit of subsidy removal, you must factor in also the cost of subsidy removal. It is the difference that is your value. We haven't done that.
No, but
Because if you say 1.3 trillion, which was the value, we are told,
just
was this thing. What of the strike? The strike cost 1 trillion naira.
No, but just as what my colleagues have pointed out, I mean, the two committees in the Senate and the House of Representatives, these questions, in fact, I'm not sure when that report is going to come forward, but that report is expected. And so when that report comes up, all of these responses is expected to be addressed in those.
What we have been doing in this country is that when this kind of things, when you put the executive on the spot, they start smoke screening. That's what we've been doing since 1999. They come up with this committee, that committee, and what is happening? The way is just to take the bottom out of what is going to come out of the probe, and you're going to see it. That's what we've been doing. That's what has been happening.
No, but
I can give you instances from 1999 of each time there was something like this, what the executive did, and what the final outcome was.
With all the antecedents, the history and all that, these two committees have already been set up. What would you expect of these committees?
You see, to be honest with you, I'm hard put to tell you anything that I will expect from these committees when I know, as I am saying and insisting, that there isn't a clear basis for their being set up in the first place. Look, the Rebado committee, there is 90.
But
there is 90, which is the creation of the law.
90 has a specific.
What is it? Is it transparency, isn't it? It is transparency.
Yeah, but NATI is an extractive.
What is it? NATI is
extractive industry.
Transparency initiative.
Yeah, NATI has to do not just the oil sector.
Exactly.
With all the other solid minerals as well.
Is oil sector not a part of it?
Ribado's committee is specifically for the oil industry.
Let me tell you what happened in the same oil sector. While you have an audit report, okay, that is being released, that is being looked into, the same oil sector, the oil minister has set up a committee to do a management audit of NNPC. Look at these conflicts. While the same NNPC was audited and the audited report is there, instead of looking at that audited report, we are having another committee
in that case
that is doing a management audit. I mean,
so what you're saying is that some of those audited reports should also be examined. These are the issues. You look at these things first of all. One thing before the other. You don't do 100 things. People say you don't put all your mouth, all your fingers in your mouth and lick at the same time. You don't do that. Okay.
You see, look, we have something that is going on. We place something before the National Assembly, the representatives of the people, in terms of how you want to use the people's collective patrimony. You follow to run their affairs, and they are now looking at that document. They ask you questions and ask for answers. Before providing those answers, they are coming up with different committees.
You follow the other committees of Senate and House of Reps in their probe. What do you expect from the reports?
Of course, you saw what happened. From the report, one expects, that the question be asked as to why a budgetary provision of 450 billion naira, 245 billion naira, would go up to 1.7 trillion naira in 1 year. Look, that question has to be answered. If we don't answer that question, even if we set up 100 committees, as far as I'm concerned, we are not serious.
Yeah, but all of those questions.
In what country will a budgetary provision of 245 billion naira go up to 1.7 trillion? How? Who approved that money? How was it spent? On what? Who made the budget? A budget is not a guesswork. It's an articulation. And the budget cannot go that wide by way of variation. It doesn't make sense. And we cannot be setting up committees to do this, to do that. Why we haven't answered that question? It's a critical question, and it is the critical part we have to travel before we can get anything right. It's not possible to do any committee thing when that question is not being. And who approved that money? How come we got that far? How come we consumed that much? So what has been the history of consumption? Say from 2006 up to that, they were saying that when during the probe something. So how come we went up that high? 2011.
For you expect nothing of this committee
until those questions are answered.
Even though there are two very different committees already handling this.
Even if there are 100 committees, as far as I'm concerned, look, but we have to be very serious the way we do things. Management is practiced all over the world. That the way they do it is not the way we do it, and that is why we're not getting anything right.
Which way did they do it?
Look. You have to have a basis. Remember, you said there is subsidy that is removed, that you are paying subsidy on petroleum products. Then you want to know, you are removing subsidy, and you ask the question, how much is this subsidy which you are removing? What is the value? And up to today, you don't know the value. So if you don't know the value of what you are removing, then what are you investing?
In other words, you didn't. There was no point for you to have gone through the terms of reference.
If you don't know the value of what you're removing, then why do you know the value of what you're investing in a committee?
No, I mean,
you are investing for a committee to use.
No, the thing, what I'm saying is, since you say the House of Reps and the Senate have got to come up with their recommendations first before the committees would even be considered.
Yes. Because what we needed to do, the Senate was already doing that even before they went on recess for Christmas and New Year. The executive ought to have waited, because it dropped a document before them, and it was that document that necessitated, that is the budget and the medium-term economic framework. Those were the document, and that is what the executive works with. So if you drop that document with the people, these are the representatives of the people, and they are looking at that document, you don't do anything until you have had their own say on the document.
If you say,
of course, the document is a proposal. Right. Whatever they said was not going to be the final thing.
If you
they
talk
pass
about
it to you, you look at it, then we now agree on that document.
Just a
that
moment.
Is the basis on which we are working.
If you look at the Senate and the House of Reps, and you're expecting some of these questions to be answered, but we had various sessions with different assemblies, different recommendations, and those who also said at the time that nothing was going to come out of it, which you also have followed previously.
And that's what I'm saying.
Wait, are you saying that this same National Assembly, nothing will come out of all of this?
The National Assembly, we are beginning to see it already. You know that there is a report. There is a report from this. Listen, there is a report from the Senate to the effect that which said that the BPE, the BP DG should be removed, and that is the way privatization was done. Okay, that report is with the president. But the only thing that people were beginning to expect, and I also was expecting that something will happen this time, because of the fact that what has been lacking in this country before happened for the first time during this subsidy removal. That is, Nigerians came out and said, no, this country sovereignty belongs to the people. This is something we have not been doing before.
So why is it now
because we have done it now? If we keep our feet down and say we want to see the end of this subsidy thing, that's the point I'm trying to make.
What changed for you?
We see it, as far as I'm concerned, 100 committees will make sense.
What changed for you? Why is it that you believe this National Assembly to come forward with some recommendations which will be acted upon this time, as opposed to previous times?
The National Assembly itself is not going because they have had probes in the past. So the National Assembly per se will not be able to do anything different. And there is nowhere in the world where people in government just act like angels. The people who put them there make them act the way the people want them to act.
No, I mean, you say you believe that...
I believe that because of the fact, the seriousness we showed, that's what I'm saying, as a people. Okay, your channel's television played a prominent role during the subsidy of actually anchoring it, and the rest and other television stations did that. We haven't done that, at least to the best of my knowledge, in this country. And because of this new reawakening by the people, that's what I'm saying. That if we insist, because of the interest we took in the House of Reps probe, to say, look, we want to see the report, and we want to see the report acted upon, and we insist the report will be acted upon. And I think that is the way to go. That is the first thing we should do. When we do that, then we now begin to talk about committees that will implement whatever the outcome is. But to begin to set up committees when that is pending, I don't see how the committee is going to work.
But if the recommendations come forward, it gets to the executive. It's the same committees that will be set up.
I just gave you an example of the Mantle committee which didn't work. I just gave you an example.
Let's take a look at it as it is now. I mean, you said that you do not expect anything from the Kolade committee. But be that as it may, Nigerians believe that it was only 50% of subsidy that was removed, and as such, the Kolade committee, some people believe, I'm not saying Nigerians because you're a Nigerian as well, believe that the Kolade committee should still go ahead because some money is being saved, as it were. But since you do not agree, I mean, that we've sorted out our issues properly enough for us to actually have a committee to know how much of the committee is going to be spending and how it's even going to spend it, what would you have the president do now? Assuming you were president, what would you do?
I have been saying this. First of all, I'm not the president. But if I were the president,
or even to advise him.
Okay, if I were, I may not even call it advice. Maybe if I were to make a suggestion, what I would suggest, wait for proper information. You don't make decisions without information. We seem to be too much in a hurry about the way we do things. See, there isn't enough information on this subsidy thing. I'm saying it. And like I said earlier, subsidy is not the same thing as price increase. Price increase is direct taxation. It immediately gives you value. when you increase subsidy, when you remove subsidy, you have to look at the benefit of the subsidy, and the loss is being suffered as a result of the removal. And you have to have, it's a comparative thing. There must be a difference. That difference is your money. Is what the value is net value.
This is
we don't have the net value right now.
This is in cognizance of the fact that Nigerians believe that some subsidy was taken away, and as such, some money is being saved. How would you face the people who are already skeptical and almost cynical that, you know, we still have to wait and actually determine what the true and real value is before we begin to act on anything?
What I'm saying now is this: how much is that money? Because we said 1.3, that's what government was saying, and that 1.3 was the amount that was said to be the value of money that was spent on subsidy for 2011. But if you remove subsidy, you cannot get the value you get cannot be 1.3.